regions. So who is mostly like to be exposed to COVID-19 because of the health disparity in Alabama? That's research question one that we're going to explore. Research question number two is there any relationship between pre-existing conditions and COVID-19 in the state of Alabama? Number three, is there any relationship between social determinants of health and COVID-19? So those are the three questions we're going to explore. So these are the method we used it. One is GIS. We collected data from several sources. So you can see that we use census data, and also we use geotechnology, Google technologies, to understand the distribution of uneven development. So these are the findings. Results number one. To answer the first question, according to 2020 and 21, we have in Alabama 65 counties. If you consider the top 10 poorest counties in Alabama, 7 counties are from the Black Belt region. As I said before, Black Belt region is predominantly occupied by African American communities. So these are the counties. You see all these, I put BB, it's called Black Belt counties. This is the Black Belt counties on your right side in Alabama map. The darker the color, that's the dire the situation. The largest people died because of COVID. That is the Black Belt region. Now here, just I will give you some idea, because far away from when you see this data, you got to know a little bit about the distribution of population. In the state of Alabama, 69% white population. How much they lost population during the COVID? Only 56%. Only 27% of the population, African American population, lost 45%. It clearly says that minority community, they face large impact due to uneven development or access to healthcare. So these are some of the things that we are trying to connect using the geospatial technology. So don't worry about the numbers, but look at the darker color. Now, if you look at that, this is the Black Belt region. This particular map says because of the poverty, they cannot afford for vehicles. Number two, diabetes. The larger diabetes also located in the Black Belt region where African American population is the predominant. Over here, that is obesities. So if you put together all these factors, who lost more people in the Black Belt region where African American communities? Moving here, results number two is there's any relationship between pre-existing condition, right? Pre-existing condition and COVID-19. What you see here, the darker color, that's the poverty. Top 25% of the counties are considered more poor counties. They are from the Black Belt counties. Again, it is minority population. What is these two dots here, the yellow color? Those are the large chemical pile locations. Why large two locations are located here in Alabama? Because of the minority community. They are living in under poverty. So if you look at that, we are connecting this poverty because of the toxic waste are located here. So that is an environmental justice question. That's another day discussion. I don't want to go there.
They bring from other states.
They are bringing from other states. Yeah, that's true. So because of the two toxic piles, you look at this particular color here, that is breast cancer is very high. There's a relationship between the toxic pile. Over here, this is lung cancer. So we are connecting poverty, toxic waste, and cancer, and who lost the life? Once again, the minority community. Number three is there's a relationship between socioeconomic determinants and COVID-19. We're going to show you quickly two examples. One is the location of Walmarts. You know, Walmarts is a larger retail shops in the United States. And the other one is medical facilities. Now, what you see here, look at the Walmart location. We have 100, right now, 110 Walmarts in the state of Alabama. If you look at the location, this particular location here, it's called Madison County, 9. This is Jefferson County. It's called Birmingham, 21. I'm talking about one county, right? This is Montgomery. This is where we are located, 4. And over here, this is called Baldwin and Mobile County, 10. But look at this particular boundary here. This is Black Belt counties. In the Black Belt counties, altogether, if you remove these 4 Walmarts, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 17 counties are considered number 1 and 7. 17 counties are considered Black Belt counties, but we have only 4 Walmarts by the time Here you have 21. You see the concept we are presenting, uneven development. The question we need to ask, why these are not equally distributed. If you talk about equity, if you talk about discrimination, right, all those concepts, people first, right? We need to distribute resources equally. This is also same situation in India. So this is why we connected this. If you look at all the arrows here, where you have large access to resources, they don't have any problems, the lighter color. But where the problems are, look at this. We put the arrows where they don't have Walmarts. Look at the pointer here. This is no vehicles. Without vehicles, they can't reach to the places. Therefore, you see obesity is very high, COVID is very high, and diabetes very high. This
And
is
they are also rich, economically better off regions.
yes, yeah. They're also very rich regions because they have the Walmarts. This is our final results. These are major hospitals, right? If you look at the hospitals where they're located, once again in Montgomery, this is Birmingham, this is Madison, Huntsville, this is Mobile. Over here, there's no hospitals. There are so many hypothetical ideas we can talk about. But if you look at the location here, these are minority regions. Because of that, who's losing life? So this is why we are trying to understand, using geospatial technology, how technology can address these particular issues of women and children and all these people they are losing, and particularly minority population. Although they are 26% in the states, but they lost large number of people because of the COVID, because they don't have access to resources. In conclusion, GIS application underlines the relationship between COVID-19 and the health disparity. GIS also illustrates there's a strong connection between pre-existing conditions such as diabetes and all those stuff I said, inequality and economic conditions, and COVID-19 among minority population. And finally, our finding highlights health disparity and spatial inequality in development in the minority community, particularly connection to the COVID-19 period. So that's our research. This is our references. This is our acknowledgement. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramakrishnan, and for also, keeping within the time limit. Really enjoyed because I can see a very apt comparison with India and the minority communities in India. So thank you very much for that. And now I invite the third speaker, women.
Second, excuse me, can we have a first speaker just came in online?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So can we please have Miss Nandori for her paper on changes in the welfare state legitimacy due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the case of Minnesota.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I'm sharing. Okay, so I have shared my screen. Hopefully you can see it.
Yes, we can, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm Eszter Siposné Nándori from Hungary, and I have had the opportunity to spend an academic year in the United States in Minnesota. And while I was there, I examined the public perception of poverty and how the legitimacy of the welfare state is related to it. And due to the fact that I spent my time during the pandemic, I decided to examine the effect of the pandemic on the public perception of poverty and how the welfare state legitimacy has changed. So it's usually said that unusual social and economic strains can temporarily modify the public perception of poverty. And I was interested in how the public perception of poverty changed in Minnesota. And within Minnesota, I was interested in the case of St. Louis County. So first, I carried out a data collection at the beginning of 2020 in January and February, and then the COVID came, and I decided to repeat my data collection in summer 2020 to see if there were any differences in the public perception of poverty. To do the data collection, I used the methods of systematic data collection. So let me say some very short words about the public perception of poverty in general. Fagan examined American households in 1975 and concluded that three main categories of the lay explanation of poverty can be distinguished in the literature. Individualist, when this is the individual who is responsible for his or her bad situation. Structural means that these are the economic and social circumstances that causes poverty. And fatalist, when poverty is due to fate or bad luck. Then Furnham used the same categories, but he added a fourth type, which is social fate. So I used these categories and tried to reveal what characterizes the public perception of poverty in Minnesota. When we talk about the poverty in Minnesota, we have to think about the Minnesota paradox, which says that there is a troubling discrepancy between the overall high values of economic and social indicators and the very low economic and social measures of the minorities. So, in spite of the fact that the state is a middle-income state, minorities have problems with financial problems and other social problems. Racial disparities can be found in education level, income level, poverty rate, and health outcome. Here you can see an example of racial differences, like the poverty rates by race and ethnicity, and you can see how huge are the differences between white and American Indian or Black or African American people. Here you can see a map of Minnesota. This is St. Louis County that I focused on. As I already mentioned, I used the methods of systematic data collection and also the consensus theory to determine the sample size. Each data collection had two steps. The first step included free listing, when I elicited as many items as possible about what people think about poverty, so poverty-related items, and what people think to be the causes of poverty. And then I had a long list of potential causes of poverty. And in the second step, I used quicksort to order these items from the one least often related to poverty to the one most often related to poverty. And when I had the list, I summarized the results and used SPSS program and statistical tests to make comparison between the two dates. The results, here you can see survey edge results, survey 1 result, and here survey 2 results, and you can see the changes. There were many items mentioned in both surveys, so before the pandemic and during the pandemic, but in some cases there are significant differences. Like I would highlight the position of minority, which has changed a lot, and the chart shows that it became more important in relation to poverty by the middle of 2020. And I also categorized my items into individual, structural, and fatal groups, poverty-related items, and also the causes of poverty. And you can see survey 1 items and survey 2 items. And if we compare the two surveys, we can see that more individual items were listed in survey 1, both in case of poverty items and also in the causes of poverty. And in case of survey 2, there are more structural and more fatal items. If you read the list, the whole list, you can find some new items in survey cat 2, like COVID-19, which is, of course, was unknown before the pandemic, no support from the family, and also racism, which is a potential cause of poverty, according to the informants, and it was not mentioned before the pandemic. I compared the results of the two surveys to reveal if the differences are significant or not. I used the t-test to test the differences, and the significance levels show that there is only one case when the difference is significant, and these are the structural causes of poverty, which became more important by mid-2020. So as a result of the pandemic, structural causes of poverty became more important. In case of other items, there were no significant change. And as a conclusion, I can conclude that the pandemic have modified the public perception of poverty in the examined county. One reason was that structural attributions for poverty became more important. The other one is then more structural and fatal, and fewer individual items were mentioned. So as a result, I can conclude that the public would accept a more generous welfare system in spite of the fact that the United States is typically an individualist country. But because of the pandemic, structural reasons have become more important. I am not sure if these changes are temporary or permanent. Some further surveys would be needed to test if what happens after the pandemic. The results suggest also that extensive public support for increased welfare spending is needed. Policymakers should be made aware that the public supports much more than just emergency assistance in these unprecedented times. And one more important point, I mentioned a lot that minority and racism has increased its importance. We have to remember that the incidents in Minneapolis against people of color happened in May 2020 because of the murder of George Floyd and the following indignation of a huge part of the population. So probably it also had an important effect on the lay explanation of poverty. So probably that's why the item minority and racism has become more closely related to poverty. And some new items were also included, like COVID-19, lack of childcare, or socially isolated, as items related to poverty. These were probably because of the lockdown and the requirement to practice social distancing, because people may have felt isolated and or they have found it difficult to find a daycare for their children, which was extremely difficult during the lockdown. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. And I'm happy that we are just keeping to the time limit. So thank you so much for that presentation. Now I invite the third speaker from Spain, Meryl Canales Potens, Women Voices in Digital Storytelling During the Pandemic, a case study in English literature classes.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, perfect. I'm going to share my screen. Let me see. Okay. Okay, here it is. Well, thank you, first of all, for giving me the opportunity to share my work. So a collective, thank you, and wish you a very nice conference after all. During the lockdown in 2020, in the English literature subject, for students in their fourth year majoring in primary education, stories had to be created in which optional male or female characters were allowed, although it was recommended to be aware of the fairness of using female protagonists too. Basically, students' creativity was put at stake. One of the problems a children's teacher, writer must face when writing a story is the need to shorten the stories. One of the challenges is to keep the identity construction so that the reader can feel identified with some of the characteristics of the story's protagonist. This is when the protagonist's gender enters the creative process, and women are less taken into account as main characters in the stories. And narrative structures that are successful in novels and films usually do not fit children's literature. Either they are too long in the case of a novel, or as in the case of a film, they are visual art resources as sound effects and visual effects, which are used for increasing suspense. So there are some basic formulas which are very useful when constructing stories for children and very easy to implement. This is the case of children's narrative structures and the basic chains that define them. Basic chains, considering the classical structure of tales, the main problem is length. The basic narrative structure is a main character having an objective and finding some obstacles to overcome. It is a classical structure which contains 3 acts, but however, the main characteristic of the second act is the consecutive difficulties in which the main character goes through the story. This is usually done to keep the suspense and interest of the reader or the viewer in the case of cinema. The difficulty is to find time and space to describe these consecutive difficulties. In children's literature, the outcome may turn to be unsubstantial story because there aren't enough difficulties to overcome by the protagonist. Thus, the solution, as I am telling you, is to modify the classical structure to turn it into an optimal formula, a base chain for each type of plot in children's literature, at least in early stages. Then as for class methodology, the English literature class evolved to a digital storytelling online class in a situation of lockdown due to COVID-19. Therefore, students had to attend explanations, create stories, and present works online. Then the methodology used in class was theoretical, but also practical. The didactics at the beginning of each session, students were presented with the base chain of the structure, then the structure was illustrated, a list with an example taken from English literature, and an example from a short film. And then afterward, both texts were analyzed from the base chain point of view, and questions were solved. Finally, students started their practical work, which consisted in writing a short invented text following the base chain provided. After writing it, they had to decide the student's age, the learning objective, grammar, syntax, vocabulary, topics dealt in the story, and pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading activities. To complete the steps, each student shared the written story with the rest of the group. Students read the story in silence. They tried to identify the parts of the text that fit with the base chain, and then they analyzed the structure and if it worked or not. And then the rest of the students established a sort of debate and dialogue with the author to improve the story, the activities proposed, and the learning objectives. Then the guidelines, the course basically lasted one semester in which 16 fourth-year students working in pairs had to write 8 stories. They followed the instructions given in reference to narrative structure. And then as for the results, 48 stories were presented in group class, out of which 14 were specifically dealing with feminine protagonists. The following 7 stories, which I'm going to show you now, belong to 5 different narrative structures, namely serpent, repetition, descriptive, process towards intimacy, and rereading. All of them were presented digitally by authors, which were mainly my students. The first one is The Well-Guarded Secret, explains Nora Clark's life. It is the objective of the serpent structure. Students describe the story and justify the main character as follows. Nora Clark is the main character of the story. We chose a girl as the main character because most of the stories are based in male protagonists, which are usually seen as heroes. In this case, Nora clearly shows that ambitious, energetic, passionate, proactive women can go as far as they want and can be as powerful as men have been all along history. Nora loves nature and to be surrounded by animals. When she was young, she was used to feel free and full of energy when she was playing with her African friend in the savannah until the sun went down. Despite the great amount of difficulties she faced due to the severity of her family, she finally could fight for what she really liked, could follow her dreams and accomplish her goals in life. Ontioni is another example, but I'm going to jump due to time. And then Olivia, the lighthouse guard, is another example of repetition structure. The justification for the use of a feminine character is done by a student as follows. First of all, we chose a girl because usually the people who live alone are men. So we wanted to clarify that women can also live alone and be happy without any problem. Focusing on the name, we chose Olivia because it is a quiet, known, and international name, and it is usually related to the sea and navigation patterns. So as the name reminds us of that, we found it appropriate for the story. Mia the Dolphin and Her Friends is a descriptive story of life in the sea, which follows the pattern of a descriptive structure. Students describe the story and justify the main character as follows. Mia is the main character of the story. We decided to introduce a female character to increase female role as main character in children's literature. Mia is a dolphin, and she has got 5 different friends. All of them are sea animals: the seahorse, the whale, the jellyfish, the fish, and the shark. Each character is presented with some characteristics that make them special. And then for children, which is a story that breaks the standardized patterns inherited by generation. Alex's favorite color is pink and does not like playing football, while his best friend Sam likes playing football. And in a learning process, Sam finally understands and respects Alex. Right? This is the process towards intimacy structure, in which 2 different characters meet and become very good friends at the end, but at the beginning are very, very opposed. Talking about this topic in class, could be a good chance for fifth grade students because at this age, they are starting to build their personality, making decisions, establishing relationship with the classmates. Thus, they need to know that they have to respect each other and they need to be able to make decisions on their own. Sexism is placed everywhere, also in children's lives. We believe that it is good to talk about it and with them and educate them to have a responsible attitude in gender equality. We chose For Children as a title. The message of our story as that there are no activities, sports, color, among others, boys or girls, but for people. With this title, we sum up the learning of the story and we give them a clue when they start reading, which could make them think about every situation while they are reading the story. At the end of the day, which is the other one, two main characters are presented very opposed, right? One is a female and the other is a male, but they have different feelings and just reverse feelings. And then the bedroom mystery, which belongs to the rereading structure, which explains an apparently simple story, which has a secret reveal at the end, which implies rereading. Again, the students present a story that seems to be about some characters in a bedroom, but we discover at the end that the characters are the contents of a pencil case, and the main character is a girl to which they belong. Students describe the story and justify the main character as follows. With this way of teaching, pupils can learn in different methods of new vocabulary. Moreover, it is an interesting topic for children because they can experiment that things are not always as they seem to be. So, sorry, I'm very fast, but I know we're running out of time. These are the conclusions. This research was about pre-service students' creativity, but also about how these students use determined narrative structures and how these narrative structures were filled with feminine protagonists to enhance gender equality in primary education. The comments of the authors of the stories witness their future predisposition towards a more thoughtful planification for their classes. They appointed that most stories are based in male protagonists, and they offer the possibility of equally signaling a feminine character for an action story. What is known as usual men's life turns to be an all people's lives. Therefore, gender roles are naturally switched and even turned into a regular way of living. Also, identification of words associated to a determined gender are worked out. For instance, the word cat seems masculine, although the animal can either be a male or female. And then to finish, students present stories which seem to be about some characters, but they are totally different ones at the end of the story. So all in all, this has been my contribution to gender identification and gender construction in education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am, because you also belong to the discipline, which is very close to my heart. And it was, a very nice presentation touching on so many aspects, especially the agency that one wants to give to women. I now invite the last speaker of this session, Miss D. Angelis B. and Miss Gragan TP on storytelling and self-narration.
Sorry, I have a paper to present. This is Dr. Sudipta.
Okay.
Uh,
Ma'am, okay.
yeah,
So you have, I had 5 papers, but let's take this and then we can take yours.
okay. But in the schedule that has been shared, my paper was there. So,
Okay, the one shared with me didn't have it. Doesn't matter, ma'am. We'll be very happy to have you present.
We can add one more paper. We are really
No
late.
problem.
So how about we do it like summary of the two? If we could present maybe in less than 8 minutes each presenter, then we can move into closing session.
yeah, actually, it's quite late for here in India itself.
Absolutely.
Sudipta, ma'am,
Yes.
if we have these two speakers on storytelling and self-narration to develop women's empowerment, maybe we could give you 6 minutes and we'd be very happy to have you speak. She's from the Roma Tree University, Department of Educational Sciences, Italy. Are you there? I don't think they are there. So, Sudipta, ma'am, you now have 8 minutes to yourself.
Great. I'll just quickly talk about some aspects that I would like to discuss. First, to just briefly talk about myself. I teach sociology in Christ University, Bangalore, and I hope it is visible, the slideshow. Yeah.
No, it's very, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be talking about agency for whom. Basically, what I'm trying to look into this paper is to understand power and how, when we look into technology, this whole idea of power comes again and again, at least when we are contextualizing this in terms of Indian context, most importantly. So, just quickly running through the presentation. So, first, to understand technology, it has been always been viewed as something very empirical, something very objective, and something which does good for everyone. But probably there has been a lot of discussions that we are doing, that we cannot just understand technology in a very objective and empirical way. Rather, we need to understand it in terms of subjective experiences and how it is beyond enabling an individual or constraining an individual. Rather, it is much beyond that, in terms of understanding the kind of intervention it does with women's bodies or women's choices, or when it comes to women's existential experiences as well. So when we talk about women's agency, there are certain aspects that we need to understand, is that we look into agency as just not voices or empowerment as such, but it's also a negotiation, continuous negotiation, subversion, questioning of certain kind of practices. We are questioning authority, resistance, we are manipulating the order, and we are kind of trying to understand ourselves in reference to a power structure in the particular society. So what I just want to reflect here is that when we talk about women's choices, it's just not mere choices that we can actually look at, because we obviously understand it's about agency, it's about choice, but where is this choice coming from? So we need to really understand also the socialization and cultural context of these choices, in really understanding whether these are emancipatory intervention of the technology, or these are constraining and affecting women in a very different way. So when we talk about technology, market, women's body, we know how the mass media, the mass industry, and obviously technology in different, very many ways has been projecting women or constructing women in a perfect beauty standard, in reference to perfect beauty standard. And again, technology is, however, helping us to get different kind of products which will help us in having those beauty standards, achieve those beauty standards. So at one point we can say that probably there is a sense of self which now we are experiencing, with where we achieve ideal self through mobile apps, and we have different kind of filters that actually kind of construct ourselves in a particular way that we would like to look ourselves as. But then the question comes that where is these warnings coming from? How do we understand that these are the perfect body types? And then we also have to understand the male understanding as the male gaze and male expectations, that how whether we can put agency or choice really as something autonomous. And just the last aspect that I would like to talk about is when we talk about intervention of technology. Obviously, I'm just not talking about it being constraining, but I also would like to talk about that when we look into sex reassignment surgeries happening. Obviously, I mean, we at some point we are questioning the biological essentialism, and we are looking into the self from a transcendental and transformative intervention of the technology. But then again, plastic surgery or Botox, or where is something that again we are reaffirming to certain kind of ideas that are there. And lastly, the question on surrogacy, I think we already discussed. When we look into motherhood, the technological surrogacy, IVF, the question comes that whether it is the different biological motherhood, I mean, something beyond biological motherhood that we are looking at, or is it at some point also reaffirming the role of being mothers by this or that, is what we are trying to understand. And what we can't miss, at least, I mean, in all the context, I think it's just not in Indian context, but everywhere, is the whole idea of intersectionality and technology. Like technology actually is emancipating, or when we talk about our choice, when we talk about achieving perfect body through certain kind of surgeries, or presenting ourselves in a particular order, who are the one who are really getting it. One of this as I mean, just to end it, we whether in context to surrogacy, this is sociologist Josna Gupta, who kind of says that whether at some point whether we can really have a bond, I mean, a sisterhood, which between the surrogate mother and the intended mother, and whether we can think of trans feminism as well, transnational feminism as well, and are we really looking into beyond boundaries kind of a linking of how we understand class and different other differences that are there. So that is where we understand that how technology is not really very objective, but very, very subjective and located and situated, and that's how experiences actually happen. So I just kind of ran through the whole presentation in a very, very short period of time. These are my references. I hope I made some sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sudipta. You reminded me of Naomi Wolf's book, The Beauty Myth, and the body positivity movement that is going on, and how technology, works against us, in the sense that we are supposed to be what they want us to be, and the male gaze and the female look beautifully put. Thank you very much. If we have the fifth speaker, can I please request her for her presentation on storytelling and self-narration to develop women's empowerment? Because I think storytelling, when you tell your stories, you empower not only yourself, but you empower others, those who hear, the women who hear your stories. So I think this should be a very good presentation. But if they are not there, I would like to thank each and every presenter who made the time that we spent together worth our while, beginning with policy making, health issues, sociology, literature. We have traveled a very long distance, covering many disciplines. And I think what we want ultimately to say is that the women's issues are related with the issues of minority, with the subalterns. And as such, what we are looking at is an expansion of the metaphor of marginalization. That is what I think our effort was in this panel. And we were looking at post-pandemic situation where Dr. Ramakrishnan presented on the health issues that were faced by minority people. We had a presentation on the welfare state, what policymakers. If we could mute, yeah. So the racial disparities, I think, were very, very well brought out, because both the papers, the first and the second paper, talked of the structural conditions, how racial disparities. And my work also is on African American literature, so I really connected so well with what was being said. Again, the stories that the students shared, and I think those narratives were very, very important, because they put women at the center. And to me it seemed like and then of course the last presentation by Dr. Sudipta, I think we brought together race, class, gender, and how these issues they intersect. And that is what we mean when we talk of the intersectionality of of women's studies, and how all these things intersect. So thank you very much. And I think I would like to close with this, that the power dynamics never change. And we are always behind, whether it is technology or whether it is anything that empowers others, we are always a step behind. But I'm sure we will cover this hiatus, this gender divide. And one day, in my own lifetime, I would definitely see something changing and a change coming over all these issues that we have talked about, because I have been in this field of subaltern studies for over 3 decades, and I see very little changing. But I'm sure that the landscape and the narrative has to change and will change. I wish all of you the very best, and I thank both the World Center for Women's Studies and the Holy Cross College for giving me an opportunity to learn from all of you, to hear the different voices from different disciplines, and to enrich these 2 hours have been very enriching. Thank you very much, dear presenters, and all of you who have been present here, so nicely keeping within the time limit, and beautifully presenting, because it didn't seem to me that we missed out on anything, though we cut 2 or 3 minutes of your presentation. Thank you very much for bearing with us, and for listening to us, to the audience, for your participation and your patience. Thank you very much to the organizers, the organizing committee, and all of you friends. Have a very, very fruitful year ahead, and may we win. May our voice be heard. Amen.
Good evening, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Sudhi ma'am, good evening. Charan Spar.
Professor Jagrit, yes. Thank you very much for lovely session. This was the third session and the last. We have one more item during this present conference, and that's our valedictory session. We would like to welcome Dr. Father Benny John from Holy Cross College.
Father Benny John will not be available, ma'am, at this hour. So, on behalf of Father, I am here to welcome all of us, the chairpersons, the paper presenters, Madam Barbara, Professor Jasbir, to our valedictory session. In fact, I must admit the entire conference across sessions, I think this was very wonderful. It was highly enriching, and we have actually seen the various scopes that women today are being given in order to empower them and to bridge the gap between the two genders. I'm sure our work, our efforts towards this direction will bring success very soon in the near future. So, on this short note, I welcome all of us present here to the valedictory session, the theme of which probably is shrinking space, rethinking body image in pandemic era. We also have with us in the valedictory session uh, Ms. Arupa Lahiri, the Regional Director, Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts and Bharatnatyam. So I welcome all of you, and I think we need to welcome ma'am. Over to you, ma'am Barbara.
Welcome, Ms. Arupa Lahiri, and I don't know if we have it. Are you here with us?
She is there. She is muted.
Muted.
Yeah,
Please
I'm
unmute
there.
yourself.
Yes, I'm there.
Unmute.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, yeah. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Jasbir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dov'è? Ah, eccola, Arupa Lahiri.
You can start your presentation, please, the valedictory address, if you can.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Good evening, good morning, and namaste to whichever part of the world you are joining from. Thank you so much for inviting me for the valedictory session. It is always very challenging to speak in the valedictory session because it's a kind of a summation of the entire seminar, and everybody has heard so much, learned so much that not much is left to be spoken. Women, technology and performing arts, women, technology and workspace, women, technology and education. Such were the interesting topics around which we were exploring, and that had one pivot, the concept of women and her negotiation with technology. The purpose of my session is to understand the concept of a feminine body, a female performing body in the era of the pandemic. Drawing heavily from one of my favorite theorists, Julia Kristeva, this session attempts to question the state of being, which has the being of a woman, which has always been read as disruptive, challenging, and a destabilizing factor from the very beginning. Does technology create a point of constancy for such a body? Question that I seek in my session. So in a particular book called Revolution, and this is a very short session because I know we have already overshot time by an hour almost. So it will be about maximum 8 to 10 minutes. In a book called Revolution and Poetic Language, which was written in 1984, Julia Kristeva had set out a theory of processes which constituted language, which was centered on the speaking subject. She explained the concept of how language signifies, but also is something that resists signification. So two very opposite concepts. Language is something that signifies, and at the same time, something that resists signification. To further elaborate, Christopher proposed language is a result of coming together of these two opposites, the symbolic and the semiotic. The symbolic was established by the rule of language, whereas the semiotic was constituted in the concept of bodily drives. She also developed a concept that many of us must have heard called Cora, which she borrowed from Plato, where he termed this concept as something which was unstable, changing forever, unfixed, and a space which was very, not constant at all. Kristeva reworked this and denoted this to be essentially a mobile concept that can be constituted by movements and their ephemeral state. The Cora in that case became analogous to rhythm, according to my understanding, and kinesis. It is a space of endless possibility where I locate the position of a dancing body that is my body. It becomes a subject in process, the body, which means a performing body is never fixed or stable, either in the essence or by representation. So when comparing a female performing body within the male spectatorship theory, it draws our attention to the kinesthetics element of dance or performance. Yes, definitely. The dancing body, according to me, is an encompassment of many such bodies. And I would say a couple of them, like the natural body, the expressive body, and in my case, the female body. The proscenium, the body located in the proscenium, offers this possibility of constant change and lends a sense of ownership to the spectators. The spectators are constantly challenged by this dynamic, fluid body, ensuring the politics of gaze is intact. With the pandemic, there was a change. The proscenium became excluded as a performance space. There was a time where we had to reinvent and renegotiate. Technology was the medium that became the new proscenium. With further shrinking of the space, the virtual world alienated the performing body. For us, the Indian dancers, this was just a process of continuum. From temple, we had come to the proscenium, and from the proscenium, now we move to mobile screens. And the performing body is a receding body which kept moving to the background. The accessibility of the body became reduced to a point of almost untouchability, whereas earlier it was an accessible body, furthering this world of Kora or instability. However, parallelly, according to me, what became prominent was a possibility of techniques that technology offered. What are these techniques? The techniques of zooming in, the techniques of looping constantly, and taking screenshots. The gaze now became more intimate. The control over the machine forwarded a control over the performing body, which gave the spectator the liberty to revisit any performance again and again, making and moving the dancing body from a space of spontaneity to a space of codification. It gave the spectator, it does, in fact, in this era, I won't say that it's a past tense, in this era, it gives the, it gives the spectator immense power to negate, dismiss, or adore a performer by the click of a button. This has ushered in what I recognize to be the era of spectators' freedom. Short attention span has effectively destroyed the performer-spectator balance of responsibility that was there while enjoying or creating a performance, which has killed off the theory of rasa. Because those who are familiar with the theory of rasa, all of us know that the rasa had equal responsibility of the rasika or the audience and the spectator. Along with that, it has led to a rethinking of choreography. Elaborate movements have given way to movements which are closer and more fitted within the body, further increasing the intensity of gaze on a performer's body. To illustrate these very points that I spoke about in this brief lecture, yes. So Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra was just the beginning. I would say that the rasa concept was further developed in the secondary treatises that were written after Bharat Muni. To illustrate this last point specifically and my argument throughout the paper, if the time permits and that Barbara has to tell me, I would like to demonstrate a single line of a piece called Kuru Yadu Nandana. It is a piece written by a poet called Jaidev from Eastern India. And his piece of work, Ashtapadi, is a cult work of Bhakti movement that had happened in India. It has many nuances. It can be read as a tantric text. It can be read as a piece of literature of high lyrical quality. But today, for me, it is a conversation between two characters. In fact, for me, it represents the missed conversation in the era of pandemic between the performer and her spectator. The movements of this particular choreography that I'm going to demonstrate, you will see, has been restricted. So I am sitting in a chair and I am addressing the entire group of spectators by no matter how big your screen is, it is just about a couple of inches that I have to restrict my movement. So this is a restriction, a redesigning, a renegotiation of the entire aspect of choreography that has been going on for thousands of years. And revisiting the choreography. This has been what technology has done to a performing body in the era of pandemic. And you will realize that it has cut out all the big movements, the essential fluidity, that was the very part of Indian dance. So whether for good or for bad, that you have to decide as a spectator. So Barbara, is there time? I won't take more than a minute to demonstrate it. And
absolutely, we would love it.
thank you so much. Yeah. Let me know also if you can hear the sound. So it talks about, thank you. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. It was just beautiful.
Thank you. So it, just a few seconds more I'll take. It talks about the love story between Radha and Krishna, two, the quintessential hero and the heroine of Indian pantheon of gods and goddesses. And it is interesting, this piece of poetry, I find it interesting because here, there's a bit of, yeah. So here is a woman who is very confident about herself. Here is a woman who is extremely confident and she knows what she wants. She can demand what she wants as we go on to explore. And Nija Gadasa, as she says that, this is all you're doing. This is what you have done. And now you have to give me back my identity. So that is, I think, a very interesting aspect, because when I am dancing as a performer against a mobile screen, constantly I am assuming that you are watching me. So I am taking back myself from the screen. So that is, in a way, kind of disorienting for us as a performer, because as a performer, we are also storytellers. We also go ahead and talk to our audience. So when you are just windows, so it's really, really disturbing. I know we have been talking the boons of technology and how technology has been very objective and it has been very empowering. But this, as a female body, it is quite disorienting for me as a female body space, and also as a performing body identity. So thank you so much. On that note, I would like to end my valedictory session, and I congratulate all the speakers once again who have been part of the panels, and we have very interesting sessions. Thank you so much for making me part of this conference.
Thank you.
Arupa, you were
Thank you very
beautiful.
much.
The dance was just
Beautiful.
amazing, amazing.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
C'è una sirena.
Ma'am, I believe the same such situation is there in our classes.
Jagriti, you are double. This Jagriti is,
You should join through one.
you are two people.
Yeah. That's why it's equal.
Two people.
So,
Okay.
since Professor Anupama is not here, Professor Jasbir, would you like to have the honor and
Actually, I think in the end we have very wonderful, I think I would say, session, as well as whole of the conference. It is very encouraging to find that the presenters and particularly the chair, and lovely to see Professor Sudhir Rajiv and others, how they have conducted and I think how concluded the session. So in that way, I think so far as Dr. Momita Day is concerned, who was chairing the session, if she is there, we have been told that because Anupama was telling me there is a small girl who has to sing a very small song, and hats off to you, baby. You are still waking up for your performance in India, because it is
Giulia.
11, and it is very good. Let us listen to the song, and then we would be concluding this valedictory.
Thank you, sir. Actually, it is not a song, it's a small poem that she is going to recite for us.
Sure.
Okay, so. She's a little scared.
I know, I can understand.
I'll just shut down my this.
You are mute.
Dai, tirati su, così non va bene. Ecco, adesso arriva.
Thank you, Jasbir ma'am, and Jasbir sir, and Babra ma'am, and Anupama for having me over.
Thank you very much for
Thank
chairing
you.
wonderful session, for all the chairs and great presenters. Maybe our Miss Dale, the smallest member or the youngest member, can read the poem.
Yes, ma'am. She's here. She will read it.
Ecco, adesso rido. Dai, vieni qua che leggi una poesia.
And Maria is a gorgeous girl too.
But she would never recite anything. Dai,
Come.
No. I think they are the same.
Okay, she must be feeling sleepy. So okay, if she is not ready, don't insist her. She may start weeping.
Dr. Mohamita, you can record it for us and send it to all of us.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, that's a wonderful
Okay.
idea. We can add to the session. Yes.
I think before we close, I would once again take this opportunity to thank you all, and particularly it is we are talking about technology and women. Practically, we have seen that Professor Anupama, who was working from the day one, coordinating. I have seen her single-handedly. She was working and contacting everyone. But today, technology itself failed our main person who was behind this particular event. But anyhow, that are there. But we are definitely going to convey to her that we tried all in a group, uh, try our best to give to each other the outcome of the conference. Really, if you would have been here, she might have been more happy. But I should, on her behalf, convey to you all that definitely when whole report is being given to her, she would be happy that at least the initiative which we were working for last few months, at least we were being able to sit, and I think a big thank to all those people from a region where I think we are nearing midnight, and those who are spending their morning and day. So this encourages me as such and shows the interest that we have started with few people, and day by day we are just increasing in number, and our group is increasing. It means once again I would say particularly to Barbara, to Marela, that all other seniors, even Nerela, that from the very beginning we are working, and it's going very well in that way. And it was a wonderful experience for me as well that now the Holy Cross College has collaborated, and those who have participated in this very particular conference must be appreciating one thing, that we are a group of dedicated researchers, dedicated person. Whenever we get a chance, we try to come together, and looking forward that some way in near future, as we have decided, we shall be meeting in person, because in it is since long we have not met. Though online we are meeting, it's I would say that technology has its advantages, that by this we are meeting online. See, I'm just looking at Sandhya Bhardwaj. She sleeps at 8 o'clock, and still she is uh, there. It means there is a group who are always interested in such type of endures. And in near future, I hope we should meet physically, have all sort of interactions, and come out from this COVID and all sort of thing. And one thing, one information which I have to share with you, I was being told by Professor Anupama that the book on which she was working, finally it has gone for publication to the
Great,
publisher. And
great.
hopefully in near future, when we have a meeting or some say conference, it would be in that way unveiled, and definitely that would be a great endure. And I request Barbara that, and even our team who are the publication team, all events which we are conducting should be recorded and should be in our newsletter, and we should try to collect these papers. Though all papers were very good, because Anupama told me when I asked her that you are the reporter of all sessions, then she told me that no, you have to take on this responsibility. That's why you might have observed that, well, two laptops I was having just to have something to say. But really, it is very satisfactory so far as presentations are concerned. I was just listening to Nerelia's session also. It was very lengthy session, but very good discussions were there. But I hope when we receive the final these papers, the final form of the papers, these would be more additions would be made to that. And I request Professor Baba that we should have a blind review and get it published in the good journals. And if it is possible, if we are not able to get many papers published in journals, we can also come up with some book where we should get it published whenever we have next conference. So with these words, I thank you all who have been participating, and till this time you are all there. And particularly to Dr. Momita Day, please convey to the father and even all people who are there in your college that it's very wonderful experience for us. And once again, long live our association, long live our World Center for Women's Study. God bless us that we should be able to fulfill our dreams where we have started to move on to raise our voice against all sort of injustice which have been there to the women in the world. With this hope and with this all best wishes, this I have to say, and I am today the happiest person that we have succeeded in this conference, and then I would sleep now with all wonderful dreams that we have achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Jasbir,
Thank
let's
you.
take a
Thank you, sir.
picture. Let's take
Thank you
a
very much.
screenshot.
Time for you.
We warmly invite everybody for the next conference, which will be, because this conference is for the past year, because of COVID, yes, so that's 7. But 8 conferences coming in November, probably, or late October. And again, we will try to combine presenters from both conferences and publish as a volume or book, but definitely have publication. So far, we have quite a few volumes already published. So more than welcome to check our website, which we also have Vibrant, our conferences on the website. And the recording from this conference will also be posted as a link on the website. So hopefully all will go well. Thank you very much. Wonderful presentation. Thank you, Executive Committee. And Professor Bokra was just fantastic. It is all her doing, and I'm very sorry she's not with us now.
Thank
you
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you,
Barbara.
Thank
Stay
you.
in contact with us.
Thank you, Barbara ma'am. Thank you, Maria
you.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you,
Jasbir.
ma'am. Good day.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye.
Bye. Nice interacting with Ma'am Majumdar and Momita ma'am.
Thank
Jasbir
you.
sir,
Thank you. Same to you.
stay and have a nice, great sleep with sweet dreams. And convey our regards to Anupama ji
Bye,
as well.
Jasbir.
We missed her
Bye,
today.
Jasbir.
The
Take care.
terrible.
Bye, Jasbir.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
Prasanta.
Bye.
See you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Andiamo, sì, sì.